I love so much, though, what you said earlier about the fact that this can really be empowering, because I think that's at the heart of this is like, even if you get results back that aren't exactly what you hope for, all of this is modifiable.
Absolutely.
So that's what really makes it so powerful is that these tools, both the clocks and the biomarkers, are really a guide to point you in the right direction and help you make some of those really attainable changes to improve your health and longevity.
Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics Raw, Real, Relatable podcast. I'm your host, Susan Robbins, Epigenetic Human Performance Coach. This is where we discuss all things lifestyle, environment, food, exercise, work, mind, and social interaction as they pertain to epigenetic expression in a way that's relatable to everyone. So if you're ready to start viewing you as an individual, take control of your life and health, and get results, buckle up, here we go. Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics Raw, Real, Relatable podcast. I am your host, Susan Robbins. Buckle up today. We are going to be talking about everything epigenetic age testing. So in the beginning when I started podcasting, so it's well over a year and a half ago, I had Hannah Went on, and Hannah is one of the co-founders of the epigenetic age testing company called TruDiagnostics. And those of you who've been listening to me know that I did interpretations for them for about a year and a half. I was a year or two ago, I guess is when I left. I don't know. Time has flown so much, I don't even know what day it is anymore. But so I redid my epigenetic age test. I was afraid to do it. I did it in September, I think it was. And I was afraid because I've had such a rough year and a half. Hannah sent me the kit after we did this. Like I said, it was like March or April of 2024. And I had it sitting on my dryer for that long because I was afraid to do it. Like, oh my God, am I slowing down my age? Because I was like, I think it was like 6, 7 years younger last time. And so in meeting with the person that went over my test this time, and her name is Jess Bonthius, after we got done, I said, we need to do this on air. I want people to see that someone who has some really junky genes and some good ones, because we all have some junk and we all have some good ones, Lyme disease, gadolinium retention, major stress in their life, how lifestyle can make a difference. Because I was truly shocked at what I saw, truly shocked, even me. And so Jess is going to be going over my test today. But we are going to start out with another person from TruDiagnostics. His name is Dr. Lauren Clark, and he is going to ease us into that. And he's going to be talking about epigenetics. So for people who are new to this podcast and haven't heard me talking about the basics of epigenetics, you're going to get a little bit of Epigenetics 101 so that you can get caught up to speed and understand where we're coming from with everything. And he's going to talk about a little bit how and why different epigenetic testing services are different. And I will have him introduce himself in just a second. But I do want to say, when Jess goes over my test after we talk with Lauren, I'm going to have her screen share. So you will see my actual epigenetic age test. If you have this ability, watch this podcast on YouTube so that you can actually see the awesomeness of the TruDiagnostics, TruAge, and TruHealth tests. And I will preface this with there's 2 tests that are available there. And I did not, because this was way back again when I got the kit, mine is the TruAge. It will not have the TruHealth, but Jess will be able to talk about the differences between the two. So watch this on YouTube if you can, or go back to it later and watch the part where we go over it. But with that said, I want to welcome both Jess and Lauren to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And Lauren, I'm going to start with, I'm going to read, let me tell you who Jess is first, and then I'm going to have Lauren go ahead and introduce himself, because you're going to be like super impressed here, people. I feel like an underachiever. Jess Bonthius, she joined TruDiagnostics as a medical science liaison in July of 2025, and she serves as a resource to healthcare providers that are looking to integrate epigenetic testing into patient care. Jess has experience in environmental health, applied epidemiology, public health surveillance, and health communications. And before joining True, Jess served as senior epidemiologist and program coordinator for Maine's CDC environmental toxicology and epidemiology programs. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Environmental Toxicology, from from Cal Davis, and a Master's of Public Health with specialization in environmental epidemiology from Yale. So that's who's going to be doing my interpretation. I think we are in fabulous hands. And Dr. Lauren Clark, go ahead and give your intro to tag on to this, and let's talk about epigenetics.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lauren Clark. I'm a board certified pathologist by training and background. I spent the first half of my career in what I would call very traditional or conventional medicine. I was a pathologist on the faculty at Penn State in Hershey, Pennsylvania, at the Hershey Medical Center. I did pathology residency training there. I did a fellowship in dermatopathology, which is the interpretation of skin diseases, usually by biopsy, at the University of Pennsylvania. And for the next 10 years or so, I spent a lot of my time at a microscope, diagnosing tissue biopsies, looking at lab results, and generally helping clinicians or trying to help them figure out what was actually going on in their patients. And I loved it. But over time, I got more and more interested in the molecular side of disease and some of the cutting edge stuff that was becoming possible, new biomarkers, things like gene expression, and eventually epigenetics. And so for the second half of my career, I moved into industry to focus on that full time, first at a company called Myriad Genetics, then at a company called DermTech, and now with TruDiagnostic. So I see my work as taking these kinds of advanced laboratory tools, things like the DNA methylation-based tests, and just trying to turn them into something that helps clinicians and patients make better decisions in the real world.
Love it. Love it. Because that's what we need to. It's all about decisions, right? Every decision we make has an implication, positively or negatively.
That's right.
And again, for our new people, let's talk about epigenetics as a whole and DNA methylation, because methylation's a big buzzword out there and most people don't know what the hell it is.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to say, Hershey, PA, I'm a Jersey girl, but Hershey Park.
Hershey
I
Park.
have very,
Yes.
very fond memories of Hershey Park and the first upside down roller coaster.
Yes. It was a beautiful place to be for a long time.
So thank you for popping that little memory back in my old brain. Off we go with epigenetics.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I think the place to start is with genetics, because I think when people hear that word, they usually think of the DNA they were born with, the genes that they inherited from their parents, and that's correct. But there's a perception that that is a completely fixed script, for lack of a better term, that decides everything about their health from then on. And it's certainly important. It does determine a lot, but it's not the whole story. Epigenetics is an interesting and I think newly understood. The concept's been around since 1942, but it's only, I think, in the last 20 years that we've really begun to understand just how powerful it is and what it can and can't do. I look at it as a layer of notations on top of the DNA script. So epigenetics is referring to chemical tags, especially in the sense of DNA methylation, that just sit on the DNA around certain genes and tell a cell which genes to turn on and which genes to turn off. And the importance of that is the genes are what are making proteins, right? And those are the business end of the cell. Those are the enzymes, the structural components, the cell membranes, et cetera. So the genes expression, genes being made into protein, is really what dictates what a cell looks like, how it functions, et cetera, et cetera. And being able to understand how those are turned on and turned off in response to all kinds of various things is really complex and really fascinating, but also has some powerful implications for how we can impact it. So your genome is the set of genes that you inherited. Your epigenome is how your body has edited that gene script over time. And that's based on how you've lived your life, where you've lived your life, stressors that you've been exposed to, things like that. There are changes that we can see even babies who were conceived during times of famine, for example, have epigenetic markers that persist throughout their lifetime. As I like to say, life leaves a mark, and we can now read those marks and they can tell us a lot about health. So I think a simple way to think about genetics versus epigenetics is thinking about genetics as the hardware and epigenetics as the software. We can't or very easily change the hardware, but we can change the software. We can change what programs are running, which ones are not running. And by that, I mean which genes are on and off. We don't have complete control, but we have, I think, more influence than a lot of people think. And then, so what is DNA methylation? Yeah, I think it's important to know that there are several epigenetic mechanisms that can alter which genes get expressed and which proteins get made. It's actually really it's a complex set of mechanisms. But I think the most important one, and certainly the most well studied and understood, is this DNA methylation. And methylation just refers to a tiny chemical tag, a methyl group, that gets added to specific spots on your DNA. And when enough of those tags are in the right places, they can turn gene activity up or down, on or off. So that's what we're talking about. DNA methylation is just one form of epigenetics, but in our opinion, it seems to be the most important form. And again, so what's powerful about that is that we can measure methylation patterns very precisely now, and we can look at hundreds of thousands of them just from a very small blood sample. And we now know that they change in predictable ways with aging, with chronic inflammation, with diet, exercise, sleep, all these lifestyle factors, stress, a whole range of exposures. And so epigenetics and DNA methylation in particular give us a way to see how somebody's biology has been shaped over time by the way they actually live, not just the genes they were born with, and what they might be able to do about it in the future. That's
That's
my
a
short synopsis of, of
that is one
epigenetics.
that's but that's one of the best I've heard. Honestly, clear,
Very-
concise, easy to understand. If it's easy for me to understand with this non-scientific, short attention span brain, you done well, doc. Just put it that
Well,
way.
it is endlessly complex when you really
It
dive into
is.
it. But in
Oh,
order to
yeah.
make use of it in the real world, that's essentially what you need to understand is just those basics. You don't need to understand the chemistry of DNA methylation or how the arrays work. You just need to understand how to interpret the results and use them to your benefit.
And that's the thing. People hear things, but they don't know how to implement properly. They just go right
Yeah.
to ChatGPT and see what that pulls up for them.
Yeah.
This is my biggest beef lately. We just did a podcast on it a couple weeks ago because it has such significant limitations and it doesn't understand us. And yet we are the ones, like you said, that controls
Mhm.
this process such a large degree.
That's right.
Our DNA does not control us. And that's one thing, again, that I push out there over and over through social media, talking and everything is we have control. People see a DNA snip and they panic. Oh my God, I have ApoE4. I'm going to have Alzheimer's. I'm MTHFR. I don't methylate. Yeah, if you didn't, you'd be dead. So
Yeah.
the panic is very real. But yet DNA epigenetics, when it's used properly, it's not fear-based. It's empowering.
Yeah. Agree 100%. Yeah.
And
I
that's why
would
these
think so.
tests are great. So talk a bit about the epigenetic age testing that you do with
Yeah.
TruDiagnostics.
So this concept of biological age versus chronological age is, I guess, relatively new. It's been around for a few decades now. But the idea was, long story short, in the process, some scientists decided they found that they could actually predict a patient's chronological age. In other words, the number on your driver's license and the year you were born by looking at DNA methylation patterns. And wow, that's really interesting, but kind of a parlor trick, more or less. What was more interesting, I think they decided, was that some people's chronological age did not match those DNA methylation patterns that they were seeing in that patient. And this concept of biological age came into being, I think, largely through that realization. So sometimes your biological age is no different than your chronological age, but oftentimes it is. For example, you may be 40 years old, but a DNA methylation test, a good one like the TruAge test, finds that your body actually looks more like that of a 30-year-old. That's great. And that can inspire you to keep up the good work if that's the case. and the good lifestyle that you're living. But on the other hand, it might tell you that, well, your chronological age is 40, but you actually have the methylation patterns of a 50-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay. And that means it's not the end of the world. It just means that your lifestyle and your habits have some room for improvement.
Heads
And
up.
it can guide you in how to improve that, the things that you can do. And a lot of them are, I don't know, they're not easy, but they're simple. They're lifestyle based things. So the test really has three distinct clocks. There's the ohmic M age, the symphony age, and a pace of aging. And these are all a little different and they can give different measurements. Ohmic M age it's a very sophisticated and well-validated biological clock that is highly predictive of someone's lifespan. So it correlates very well with all-cause mortality. Again, it doesn't determine fate. It just gives you an indicator that, yes, your risk of many chronic diseases and conditions is that of an X-year-old person. Okay, so again, that can be helpful in inspiring you to keep up the good work or inspiring you to make some changes that might be necessary. And then we have symphony age, which is more of what we call, I think Jess likes to refer to it as a health span predictor.
Span.
And I like that. And that's a little different. Health span, we don't have a good definition for health span, but we all know what we mean. I think we all know what we mean by it, which we mean what proportion of my life am I going to be healthy without a chronic disease or condition that limits me or makes me feel bad in some way. That's my definition of it anyway. And it may not be the same as lifespan. So personally, I don't want to live to 120 if the years between 90 and 120 are me in horrible health. Health span is actually really my ultimate goal rather than longevity per se. But this test analyzes the methylation patterns that evaluate the health of, I think it's 11 different organ systems: blood, brain, immune system, heart, kidney, liver, etc. And it identifies methylation patterns that are specifically related to what's going on with those organ systems. So it's not perfect. It doesn't zero in on them. If this is clearly a problem that's limited to your blood. No, of course, there's a lot of interaction between these systems, but it gives us a little bit better focus of where we can look and say, well, let's do a little bit, a deeper dive, a better look at your kidney function, for example. We'll order some conventional labs and make sure that everything's okay there. So I think that's what the main utility of symphony age is. And then the third clock is something called Dunedin pace. And it's named after the town in New Zealand, Dunedin, where a cohort of people that have been followed for, I think, 52
Over
some years
50.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating and real incredibly valuable resource. But this cohort of people that have been followed over the course of their lives with intermittent evaluations of their health and blood samples collected from them. Long story short, what we've partnered with researchers who did it, is use that to construct what we call a pace of aging. And it's almost like a speedometer. Your pace of aging appears to be something that can speed up or slow down over time. So if you're under periods of high stress, maybe physical or emotional, your pace of aging may accelerate. If, on the other hand, you make some lifestyle choices and de-stress your life a little bit and maybe get really into yoga and meditation, healthy exercise, you can maybe slow that pace of aging. Again, we're not talking about massive changes in most cases, but we're talking about changes that I think are meaningful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's, I guess, my broad overview. And Jessica has spent a lot of time, I think, explaining these. So at this point, it's probably good to ask her if she wants to add anything or modify anything that I said about them.
Yeah, Jess, you're up. You're on. Before we start going over mine, go a little bit more into it. But I want to thank Lauren first, because those explanations were, like I said, fantastic, easy to understand, because this is can be such a complicated
Yeah. Yeah.
complicated area to
Yeah.
get. So to understand it where it's clear, I appreciate that. Thank
Oh,
you.
good. I'm glad it's clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jess,
All right.
welcome.
Yeah, that was a really fantastic introduction. And I think there are two ways at TruDiagnostic that we use epigenetics. The first way is in the development of the clocks, like Dr. Clark was just mentioning. And then the second way is in the development of these epigenetic biomarkers. So in both cases, we're using epigenetics. We have at TruDiagnostic two main products that incorporate those technologies. The first being our advanced TruAge report. And in that report, there's a suite of biological clocks, those that Lauren just mentioned, in addition to some others, along with 33 biomarkers. And then there's the True Health Report, which is an expanded list of biomarkers. So here we're talking like 120 plus or so epigenetic biomarkers. So it's really neat. There's a ton of information that you can glean from both of these. But I think, so Susan, we're going to go over your TruAge report today.
Yes. I'm excited. Share away.
Okay, here we
Like
go.
I said, I was in a panic to bring this up when I saw the results came back, because I can do these tests to people. This is one of the things I offer under my business as well, and we'll have a discount code that Hannah gave me. I'll have in the show notes and talk about at the end. But I was like looking at it with one eye open when they first came back. Like, what's it going to be? How much did I tank myself with all this stress from this last year and a half? And so, as you're going to see, you will be surprised too.
Yeah. And I love so much, though, what you said earlier about the fact that this can really be empowering, because I think that's at the heart of this is like, even if you get results back that aren't exactly what you hope for, all of this is modifiable.
Absolutely.
So that's what really makes it so powerful is that these tools, both the clocks and the biomarkers, are really a guide to point you in the right direction and help you make some of those really attainable changes to improve your health and longevity.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I agree 100%. When you look at a test and it comes back great, you don't want to sit on that and say, oh, okay, well, I'm good then. I don't need to do anything else. Because again, our bodies change. Our bodies change seasonally according to the hormones which drive us, right? Everything changes all the time. Stressors change. You might move, and that's going to change how you're going to react to a different climate. It's so dynamic. And if you
Mhm.
think you can sit and keep doing the same things, ladies, menopause, right? You want to keep doing the same things you were doing, you can't, because your body has different needs. So it's all of these, whether it's a Garmin, epigenetic age testing, a DNA, all of these are wonderful insights to you. What is happening? And the more information you have about you, then it drives you to make the better decisions. And just like you had said also, if you get a test back, both of you referred to this, and it's not so good. And I remember doing these. There were a lot of people like, "But they weren't so good." And I had a physical therapist crying through her email. She said, "I'm sitting here in tears because I'm 4 years older." Like, she was in a panic. I thought I was doing everything right. And I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. There's things you can do. There's just your timing could be off. It could be as simple as that, which can drive issues and create stress in the body that can affect the methylation of the DNA." But people panic. If you look at it and say, "Okay, so this is off. Now what do I need to do to put something into action, because I have so much control." And that's where the beauty lies, in understanding that we have so much control. Because I guarantee you, I've been doing DNA for 6.5 years. Nobody has perfect DNA. Nobody. I don't care who you are. Nobody has perfect DNA.
Right.
And nobody has all crap. We all have a mixture. But it's understanding how to work with that and where you have that control. And that's why these tests are so impactful. And I just really want to stress that before we get into this,
Sure.
that again, it's to help you make the best decisions
Mhm.
in your life moving forward. Understand how a decision you may make about drinking alcohol. I have a two-part podcast like last week and then this week on alcohol and its effects. And it affects us differently because of
Let-
where we are.
yeah,
So,
to your point, I think it's really important to emphasize that this is not something to panic about. If you don't get the result that you want, don't let it cause anxiety. Let it inspire you to commit and make those changes, and then keep you motivated.
yeah,
I think that's the healthier way to look at it, and which is that's what you're getting at too.
absolutely. It could be one change.
Right?
And
Yeah.
if just take that first step. These are a heads up that something is a little off. The body is out of balance somewhere, most
Mhm.
likely. And it could be, maybe it's the time you're going to bed. Maybe you're a morning person and you're acting like a night owl and it's stressing your body. Like it can be that simple. So yeah, great clarification. So thank you for that, Lauren. All right, Jess,
All
let's do
right.
it.
Okay,
So
here we go. So we have Susan Robbins here. Test collection date was the beginning of September this year. And at that time, you were 16 years old, 59.9, actually, technically. So these are our three main clocks, as Lauren was referring to. This first one, omic age, being referred to as a lifespan predictor. And I'll walk through each of these in greater detail. But at a high level, this next one, symphony age, this is our health span predictor. So both of these so far are below your chronological age. Of course, you'll start noticing that there's actually a difference, right, between what we're seeing between omic age with symphony age, with your symphony age score being a little bit higher. And then pace of aging, this is the rate at which you're aging per chronological year, which is less than 1, which is what we want. So we have 0.76 years biologically per chronological year being the rate at which you're aging. So let's unpack those one by one. So this first one, omic age, is the product of a collaboration with Harvard. Here we're using the Massachusetts General Brigham Biobank, selecting several thousand individuals out of that biobank and several thousand of their variables. So this including clinical factors, metabolites, and proteins. We have a blood sample collected at the same time as all of that information. And so we're able to use machine learning algorithms to map methylation profiles to those clinical factors, metabolites, and proteins. And all of that information and more gets rolled up into this higher level omic age clock. Like Lauren mentioned, this is really associated with all cause mortality. And so that's why we refer to this as a lifespan predictor. This scatter plot here shows you the relationship between chronological age and biological age for males and females across the lifespan. And you'll notice, because it's really associated with all-cause mortality, we see here that the lines of regression look an awful lot like the lines of regression for life expectancy at a population level, right? With males having a higher biological age, on average, shorter lifespan than females. The way that we give context to our biological clocks, in addition to those epigenetic biomarkers, is going to be using the calculation of percentiles. When we calculate percentiles, that's based on a reference population. All of these little dots underlying the scatter plot here are part of that reference population. This is half Massachusetts General Brigham Biobank folks. So the same biobank that was used to calculate or develop this omic age algorithm, in addition to half folks from TruDiagnostic. And so we're using that half and half blend to emulate a population of normal health. Because as you might imagine, so this is the Massachusetts General Brigham Biobank. This is a hospital system-based cohort. Folks who are not always the healthiest, even though it includes folks who went to the doctor for like preventive health visits and things like that, in addition to our TruDiagnostic cohort. And for the large part, those are like biohackers and folks who are extremely healthy. So the opposite end of the spectrum. And so that's why we combine those two populations to create something that's somewhere in the middle for a more reasonable reference population. When we do that, we see that you are in the 26th percentile for your omic age. So that's a really, really nice result. You can see where you fall compared to other males and females. Yeah, raise the roof. You should celebrate that.
I wonder if we're the ones that drive the men to death, early death, trying to figure us out.
You have to say that, Susan.
Depends on who you ask. That's a great result, though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really beautiful. What's interesting too, I mentioned the discordance earlier that you can see between these biological age clocks. Omic age, because it is this sort of higher level cumulative reflection of life, of biological age, you will sometimes see in this result folks who, for example, have lived really well throughout their life until very recently. And so they can actually still have an omic age that looks pretty good, but then their symphony age result, their health span will not look as good. So that's one of the reasons that you can see a difference between results is just the the period of time, for example, that they reflect. But this to me suggests that throughout the course of your life, despite what you were saying about having lived through the 80s and all of those things, overall you look really nice from a cumulative biological age standpoint.
See, so things can change. I started drinking at the age of 14, never in a addictive type of way, but
Yeah.
I was a party girl for a couple decades there. Didn't tried every diet. I started dieting at the age of 12 because I had been overweight. Was always very active, and I think that's been one of the big changes for me. But or one of the big pluses for me that I always was active, but I never ate thinking I did, but like I said, just trying every diet, and you think of how taxing that can be on the body. But if you would explain, Jeff, what that 26.5% means, because that can be confusing to some people. They're like, "Well, but that's a low percent."
Right.
Low percent, so
Right.
how is that good? And then my other question to tag on to that, is there an ideal of how much younger we strive to be? When I did these years ago and it was the intrinsic age, like your ideal was 1 to 7 years younger than your
Mm.
chronological age. So is there an ideal kind of to shoot for? And then talk about the percentage low here being good.
Okay, I'm gonna answer those in reverse order, actually. Yeah, so in terms of, is there an ideal age? And I think I'll just answer that by saying younger is better. And the reason that I say that doesn't have to do anything really as to, like, how we look, if we look young or anything like that. It's really because biological age is associated biological age is associated with nearly every adverse health outcome. And so if we want to delay or slow or prevent onset of disease, we want to lower biological age.
Makes sense.
And then the second question about percentiles, yeah, like you want to be, so if we want a lower biological age, you want to be in a lower percentile compared to your peers. And so that's exactly what we see here. And we try to put this into words underneath the percentile result, describing that your omic MH is lower than 73.5% of folks who are your same age and sex. You'll see as we worked through the biomarkers later, sometimes you actually want a value, vitamin D, which is actually not on this report, it's on our True Health report. But of course, you want that to be higher. So you want like a high percentile in that case. So it's all going to be in the context of specifically what we're looking at. But in the context of biological age, we want to see you on the lower end and having a lower percentile. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, yeah, I understood it, but some people coming in say, "Oh my gosh, why am I so low?" Because look at when you take a test and you get if you got a 26.5%, right? You're like,
Yeah.
"I
Yeah.
failed." And
Yes.
again, people
Right.
panic, "I failed. What if I'm 10 years younger, how am I only in 26.5%?" So I just and for the people that aren't on the YouTube being able to see this, I wanted to make sure it's really clear why that is that way. Perfect explanation. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. No, good catch. Thank you. And when I mentioned too, so we're comparing you here and throughout the report to folks who are actually your same sex and age. And this will make even more sense when we get down to things like your hormone age, right? You
Mm.
don't want to actually be comparing males to females because that doesn't make a whole lot of biological sense. But that is part of this too, is that we're trying to make peer to peer comparisons when we can in terms of the cohort that we compare you against. So, this next section of the report is where we report out on biomarkers that went into the calculation of omic MH that are flagged as being abnormal. We have 33 of them included in this report. The ones that are outside of the normal range end up here. So you can see that you only have 3 out of a total of 33 that could be
Yay.
here. Yep. So that's really nice. And you'll see too that each of these biomarkers includes a percentile cutoff. So this is going to be roughly aligned with established clinical reference values when those exist. There isn't a clinical reference value for absolutely everything that we report out on. And so there we're using the scientific literature and using a clinical team to determine where really those cutoffs should be as they relate to longevity and health. And so let's take a look at the 3 that you have flagged here. So this first one, inter-alpha trypsin inhibitor heavy chain H3. This one is one of 6 inflammatory markers that we have included in this report. More specifically, this is a protein that is involved in regulating inflammation and stabilizing the extracellular matrix. When this is high, it's typically a sign of chronic or systemic inflammation. It's not terribly specific in nature, so it could be related to things like metabolic dysregulation. It could be related to gut microbiome imbalances, autoimmune conditions. So you'll notice that the recommendation here is for an anti-inflammatory diet, but generally non-specific. But this gets more interesting when we look at that second biomarker. So when we take these two into consideration, this next one, it's also an inflammatory marker. It's more specific to tissue repair. And I can actually tell you anecdotally that I often see it pop up in the context of somebody who's experiencing inflammation due to physical activity or exertion or something like a recent injury. Yeah, you're laughing right now.
What'd you do?
Because I had up until end of June about 8 months of a very chronic, extremely painful back
Oh.
situation. Like it affected my sleep, it affected everything. And then when then summer is full force right after that. And again, I know genetically working with my PH360 that my health type, the activator, very, very taxed by high altitude, by long periods of workouts. Well, of course, that's going to increase IL-6, TNF alpha. And I live in altitude. Yeah, I'm in Colorado. So my altitude here is right around a mile high. And then my hiking, I was doing pretty regular, like weekly, sometimes twice weekly, 10-mile, 9-mile, up at 12,000 feet. And like really when I did this test.
Uh-huh.
So that's my summer. And again, so you tax to add that on along with having had that
Yeah.
chronic stress and then chronic emotional stress and then the chronic stress of that back that affected my sleep so horribly. Combine all that, this absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, that very
And then
may be what we're seeing here. Yeah.
yeah, that's how what I was attributing it to. So where it says reduce stress, anti-inflammatory diet, mm, I'm spot on there. The stress thing, I do what's I know I do what's right. Brought God back into my life. That made a big difference. But super interesting to see this. And it like Jess said, it correlates exactly with how my life was when I
And
took
you
this.
might want to look at it as something of it's always a trade-off for me is we're looking at these inflammatory or repair biomarkers when they're happening in response to something like strenuous exercise.
Mhm.
That's good. That's a good
Yeah.
thing. As long as you're allowing yourself enough time to recover, which as I know gets that those recovery times become a little bit longer as we get older. And we still want to be on the same schedule that we were when we were in our 30s, and that doesn't always work. We can get close, but maybe not every day hiking above
Exactly.
1,000 feet on uneven terrain.
No,
So,
I
yeah.
always put a day in between there. Now,
Okay, good.
I
Yeah.
didn't a year ago, and I wasn't recovering. My recovery this year, and because again, I look at all my metrics, I track everything, HRV, body battery, all of that. The recovery was phenomenal this year.
Oh, good.
And again, an increase of body battery from a year prior or above HRV from 30s to the 70s. That's a
Uh-huh.
huge jump.
And,
Huge jump.
and so you said you live at what elevation? You're living at
It's like 5,100 some
5,100.
feet. Yeah, so just barely under a mile because we're
But
right
then
up
you're
north of Denver.
okay, okay. And then you're doing a lot of this you're hiking at above 10 or even 11,000 feet, which is significant even for people that baseline live at I live in Park City, Utah, so I'm baseline
Uh,
about 6,500.
yeah.
When I go up to the tops of mountains above 9,000 feet, I feel it above
You feel
8,000
it.
feet. So you're putting two stressors on your body at that point. You've got the hypoxia the lower oxygen level than what you're used to in the air, and then exerting yourself physically, climbing up hills, and even worse, descending down them. So it's a pretty significant load.
Yeah.
And so I'm not surprised that we're seeing some of this, perhaps just as a result of that. Now you've got the
Yeah.
back issue on top of that. Was that a disc injury or?
No, we don't. It was something with the SI joint, but I literally went to every specialist and all the way down to energy work, tried everything. And it was like stuck, and I could move okay. But when I sat or stood or slept,
Mm,
it would keep me awake. I had to do a whole month of a leave. I don't ever take pain meds
yeah.
just to try to sleep, and that would give me like 3 hours in a row. It was horrific. And then I woke up one day, and this is why I say, like, there's no other reason that it was a divine intervention, an act of God. I literally woke up one morning and it was gone. That night when I went to sleep, it was the same. I had to do 2 body pillows and a third pillow to where my legs were at a complete 90-degree angle to sleep.
Mm.
That was, and it still hurt, but that was the best relief I could get. And I went to get out of bed that morning, and it was like, "It's gone. It's gone," and it, knock wood, never came back.
Never came back.
Just no explanation.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Just woke up. Yeah, and that was the beginning of it was in June. That was end of June or very early July.
Huh.
And then it was like, now I'm going to the high altitudes. The snow was melted, and I felt great. It was just a big change in my body. But that's
Mm.
my summer, is I tax myself because I go to the high altitudes, and my endurance was so much better this year that I was like, "Okay, I'm okay with 10 miles and 2,500 feet of elevation gain."
That's great.
So,
I'd say keep doing it.
yeah, yeah. So I say you don't have to slow down. When you treat your body right in every other way, I knew the right way to recover, it takes care of you. And
Yeah.
you can get better. You can get stronger. You can get fitter with age. We don't have to slow down. We just do things a little bit
And
differently.
you can bounce back from injuries more
Yeah.
quickly. Things like that.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. All right, Jess,
Yep.
All right.
As you
keep
were.
us rolling.
Yeah, no, I'll just comment too that it's really fascinating seeing so many reports and talking with people about some of the changes that they make in order to improve their health. And to the points that you were both making, one of the really neat things that I see fairly often is folks actually who are dialing back a little bit their physical activity, being a little bit more strategic, right? About when they're working out, making sure that they have enough rest and recovery. And like you'll see like their inflammation markers drop just a little bit. It's a really, you can make some subtle changes that really make a big difference.
Yeah, for some, it's like, I need to do more, and for other people, it's dial it back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's it. Doing less sometimes is more.
Yeah.
That recovery
Yeah.
It's
can really just jumpstart so much more, that some of us just push our bodies so much that to take that break and dial it back a bit, it's phenomenal how that
yeah.
can
At
change.
least occasionally. Yeah, absolutely agree.
You have to.
Yep.
Yeah. That's my type, is work hard, play hard, rest hard. It's like, but it's nice out. Okay, well, I'm just gonna go for
Yep.
just a chill walk around the lakes here as
Yeah.
opposed to go climb a mountain.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, it just still keeps you active.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that gives you all the psychological benefits that come with something like that too.
absolutely.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
And then this last biomarker that we have for you, so your bone morphogenic protein 1, which is just slightly low, right below our cutoff. This one plays a big role in bone development, again, and in tissue repair. So this has to do with the integrity of connective tissues. It can be related to slower healing after exertion or injury and reduce structural just integrity and resilience that comes with aging. This one for me often pops up in the context of somebody who has either a vitamin D or calcium deficiency. So I don't know what those two levels were like for you.
Now I'm high. I
On
was
that.
high D. I was over
Like,
100.
same.
Yeah, so it
What,
wasn't that.
you know what your calcium was like?
Calcium has always been in the normal range, but I have a question here, because gadolinium. So if I look back again at this toxic metal, and I have the gadolinium deposition disease, it stores in the bone and the skin. Could that be potentially something in something like this?
That it's it's a local irritant or that's causing chronic activation of the repair
Yeah.
machinery. That's what you're thinking. Yeah. Can you tell us just a little bit about the gadolinium? How did you detect?
Yes.
Yeah.
So gadolinium is the contrast agent for MRIs. And I did a whole podcast with Dr. Richard Smelka. He's the expert on gadolinium deposition disease.
Hmm.
And I didn't know I was apparently high risk. If you have MTHFR variants, if you have other pathological issues like the Lyme disease, being female, and I can't remember the ages, but it was a pretty significant, puts you at increased risk for a gadolinium deposition.
Hmm.
And this was my third one over a period of probably 15 plus years. And it was like that was the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess you'd say. And I went through this whole story, so I don't want to bore everybody, but give you the basics of it. I couldn't walk within 8 hours of that injection. And there
Oh,
was the one doc told me, he's like, "You're lit up everywhere. It should have stayed in your joint." And it was the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. I literally wanted to die. And it was bones because it stores in the brain, the bone, and the skin.
yeah. Yeah.
And so the bone pain was unbearable. And even I've been tested since then, and that was 2018, and there's still gadolinium present. So it's very, very difficult to get rid of. And I did the chelation and everything, but from what Dr. Samelka said, he said that's gonna affect collagen. My skin went crepe pretty quickly.
All
And
over, or was it just patches and?
it started in that right leg, and then it went up to the right arm, and then to the left leg. Yeah. So now it's everywhere, and he said, "You're just gonna have some issues with collagen metabolism and all related to that." And there's always gonna be that little extra potential of inflammation.
Huh.
So that's the background of it, but
But you had
that's what I was
normal.
curious.
You had then and still have normally functioning kidneys, right?
Yeah, kidneys look good.
Okay.
Kidneys look good. I did have periods of time where EGFR actually got down into the 50s, but it's been way back up. And again, I think it's lifestyle has been a big part of that. I take care of myself.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, but when I hear bone and I wonder,
Yeah.
that's stored in the bone. Could that play a part? So, I don't know.
Yeah.
But my D last time I checked was I finally got it under 100. It had been 125, then 115, and now I just supplement here and there with it because I'm outdoors
So
without sunblock so often. Yeah.
yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Interesting.
So, who knows?
Yeah. I don't know, but it's interesting.
So if you come up with anybody like that again, you may
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that.
get something to think about.
Well, that's what's great about this is going through these with people and hearing what their history is, and it just gives us hypotheses as to why we might be seeing
Yeah.
elevations in these markers.
Yeah. Because I had the DEXA scan done last year, and my bone density was up in the 96th percentile or something. Like, I didn't have anything under 90% or 92%. Everything in the DEXA, including fat distribution, my visceral fat was like not non-existent. Lean muscle mass, all of that was in the high percentage, even compared to an 18-year-old.
Good
Yeah,
job.
I don't know. Oh, now the symphony.
I
All
know.
right,
Well, I
moving
actually
on.
think that's a really nice lead-in.
Yes.
So because I was just looking at your percentile here. So let me before I go there. So Symphony Age is a totally different clock, right? Totally distinct from Omicam Age. This is the product from a collaboration with Yale. We're using a different biobank here, but that's less important than the fact that this is a totally different type of analysis. This is what's called a principal component analysis. And in essence, what we're doing is first pulling biomarkers out of a biobank, assigning those biomarkers to an organ system, one of the 11 that we report out on here, and then training methylation or mapping methylation profiles to that organ system in aggregate. So as opposed to doing sort of a link or correlation between methylation profiles and individual biomarkers, individual clinical factors or metabolites, we're looking at them now at an organ system based level. Okay. No, when we do that, we get a high level biological age for you. You'll notice it's a little bit higher than omic MH. Again, it's telling you different things, which we'll drill down into. It is common to see symphony age track higher and a little closer to chronological age, if not higher than chronological age, especially for women. And we'll see a visual as to why that might be just in a little bit. But first, we'll point out that you are in the third percentile. So you can see, to your point, how low you fall compared to your peers and even compared to other folks, who are younger in chronological age.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, it really, really is. And these lines of regression here make the point that women actually start out with a higher biological age, but age at a slower rate and
Mm.
then end up outliving males. So it's a little bit of a different look at the trends in biological age when comparing males to females. I'm going to scroll down now to your individual organ level results. And so here, this black little dot here and the associated dotted line going down the middle represents your chronological age. All of these organ systems in green are lower than your chronological age, and organ systems in this pink or red color are higher than your chronological age. You only have one. Most women, even starting in their 20s, will start seeing a hormone age that tracks above their chronological age. A lot of this is just hormone fluctuations. Not at all uncommon to see a hormone age 5 to even 10 years older than chronological age. So the fact that yours is only 5 years older, I think, is a really nice result. It
'Cause
also
I was in a panic about that. When I saw that, when I pulled that up, I'm like, "What the hell? Hormones? But I do bioidentical hormones. How could this be?" But you're gonna explain that.
Yeah, and we've actually talked internally about giving percentile values for each organ system because I think that would help make the point that this is a very, very normal pattern. And if you see as many of these that I do, often what you'll see too is a hormone age that's even more elevated, followed by a metabolic age that's elevated, a liver age that's elevated, a musculoskeletal age that's elevated, a brain age that's elevated if you're not sleeping as well due to hormone, whatever it may be. But this is actually a really nice result, despite the fact that you were a little bit panicked about hormone age.
Yeah.
And you know what I think was also interesting? Those other inflammatory markers that we just looked at, that we had the
Yeah.
discussion about, if you look at my inflammation overall, it's the lowest one.
Yeah. Well, let
And
me actually that's a perfect lead into this next section here,
okay.
which is included in the report, and I think a really nice reference because it tells you more about what goes into the training of each one of these organ systems. So what do these represent? So let's use inflammation as an example here. And you'll notice that the biomarkers that were assigned to your inflammation, to everyone's inflammation organ system, include things like ferritin, CRP, IL-6, IL-1, like these inflammation markers, but they're not picking up specifically on the inflammation markers that we saw above. And so they're giving you all of these biological clocks are giving you different reflections, like different angles of your health, which I think is why it's really nice to use multiple of them and not just lean on one particular clock.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Why don't we scroll
So,
down?
what go back to the
Yeah.
hormone, please?
Yeah.
Because people like me, I thought it was specific to, like, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and it wasn't.
Right. Yeah.
So, talk a bit about what actually is under the hormone because then it made sense.
Hormone specifically is trained using DHEA, sulfate, and IGF-1. I think Dr. Clark can talk a little bit about the clinical implications of each of those. But from a modeling standpoint, one of the limitations is that we need biobank data. And unfortunately, everything that we want biobank data for is not available for all patients. And so it's just a limitation in terms of what we can actually use to train the organ systems. And so I'll just acknowledge that we're not explicitly including estrogen here, for example. we don't have it for everyone that we would need to have that information for in order to train the algorithm. So it's just one of the limitations that I think is really particularly pertinent to hormone.
Because
Yeah,
I
I
think that's what
agree.
people. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Doc.
No, I was just gonna say I agree that I don't think that this is. I don't know. We need to dig into it a little bit more again with the bioinformatics scientists who develop the algorithms and see what else we might be picking up here. But to me, it looks more of to be something that's looking at metabolic hormone pathways than sex hormone pathways, testosterone, estradiol, etc. DHEA as a precursor, those levels can be high or they can be normal, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the sex hormone levels are going to be normal because different tissues converted differently. I think, yeah, I think that is a limitation that we don't have. I don't think anyway a very direct representation of what's going on with some of those hormones.
Yeah, because again, I think it's like people, me, look at hormone and we expect to see the sex hormones,
Yeah.
and that's why I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
65. I don't want to be this old lady, but it made sense because and the funny thing, after Jess and I talked, I went back and looked at labs, and I actually my DHEA on the last test, DHEA sulfate was low.
No, was it?
So I went back on my DHEA sulfate.
Uh-huh.
Or my DHEA, sorry, my DHEA supplement, and I've been back on that for a
Did you
couple of
feel a
months.
change or
Yeah,
was it
yeah,
just
it feels
right?
good. It
Yeah.
definitely
Okay.
feels better, yeah,
Okay.
and I also use testosterone too, but I had been on and when I went through training, DNA training with Epiron, they had said at their clinic that they noticed when people they would put on testosterone therapy, their DHEA dropped. So they recommended 25 milligrams of DHEA to supplement with that, and I went off of it through the summer. I just thought, I don't think I need that. My testosterone all looked good, and interesting how this tested out. And I went back on, and it just feels better. So
That's
yeah,
really
it's
interesting.
can
Yeah.
can be super helpful
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah, so it's helpful there. In that regard, it's indirectly helpful in understanding what might be going on with the sex hormones. But
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, Jess, back to you.
We'll move on to this next
Mhm.
clock here that Lauren was teasing earlier. So this is the Dunedin Pace of Aging clock using that longitudinal cohort out of Dunedin, New Zealand. And so this gives you a speedometer, a rate of aging. Ideally, you want to be aging slower than than you're aging chronologically. So like less than 1 year per chronological year. And that's exactly what we see for you. The scale here is set at 0.45 to 1.6. Fortunately, I haven't seen anybody up near 1.6, and I can tell you that the lowest that I've seen is it's just above zero point 0.5. But 0.76 is a really, really nice score, and a lot of people would have trouble maintaining that. And when we look at the lines of regression, we see something very similar to what I was mentioning in the scatter plot up above with symphony age earlier, with the purple line representing the rate of aging and females maintaining a slower rate of aging across a lifespan. And again, you can see where you fall compared to many, many other folks down here at the bottom. So
Yeah, I usually saw people, and I think the majority, because that report hasn't changed from when I did them. The majority were in the 80s
yeah,
and 90s. I never saw anybody as low as you've seen in the fives, but I did see someone that was like a point 0.6, like pretty low, and that scale did not go to 0.45 when I was doing them. So they must have seen more come in, and it's gone. They had to like lower it down because people are like, "Why am I not on there?" And I think it's important to let people know it's like a for every being over a year faster than your biological age, it's a 54% increased risk over the next 7 years. 54% increased risk of chronic disease and
Mhm.
56% increased risk of death in
yep,
those 7 years. Am I still correct there?
you are
That's
absolutely
right.
correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
I remembered some things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is lower. What was that last time? Because I remember pulling up my report last time. I was like I think I might have been 0.79 or 0.77. I was up there. So I actually lowered my pace of aging, which is super cool to look at.
Great.
And I think it's also important to let people know that this changes every 8 to 12 weeks. So you can
Yeah,
do
yeah.
the Dunedin on its own to see if the interventions you're doing are making a difference in slowing that pace.
Yeah, I think that's what's really powerful about this. This is going to be the first indicator that you're moving in the right direction or the wrong direction, or how much of an impact the interventions that you're adopting are. And that's great, because I think the hardest thing for a lot of people is to make one of these interventions, a change in diet or a change in exercise, and stick with it. This is great if you're sticking with it, and that reflected in your eating pace. I think that can be really motivating to people to keep up the good work.
Yeah, agree. That's what I see. Even with me, I'm going, all right, I'm going to keep doing this because something's working.
Yeah.
And I also want to let people know I have my supplements that I take, but they're very specific to what I need. I don't go on listen to other I do listen to other podcasts, but I don't listen to everything they recommend or every expert or influencer out there. And I have so many clients. What I had one yesterday, I had to put her the supplement list was so long with multi formulas that I put that into my personalized medical AI so it could look at overlaps for me, because it
Uh-huh.
would have taken me days to go through all of that. There was so many. And we were able to knock that down. And she said, "Well, I would hear that this would be good for this, or read this is good for," and people do this. Like, I can't blame anybody. You're trying to do the right things for yourself, but you could be doing more harm. Some of those overlaps were like triple the dosages,
Yes.
the high dosages, and that can create some toxicity,
Right.
which could be why some of her symptoms are the way they are.
That's right.
And so I think that's super important. So you don't have to take every single supplement. I don't have and Lauren, we talked about this before we came on, and I would like you to bring that up too, that not everybody can afford what Brian Johnson or Dave Asprey or Peter Attia, these things that they're all recommending to
Yeah.
do. But the reason I wanted to show you guys my test and go over this is that I don't do all that stuff.
Yeah.
I am so dialed in with my lifestyle by using the DNA, the pH 360, take the supplements that I absolutely need, do the right things at the right time. I do have a little portable red light. There's sauna, all these things that you can do here and there that don't have to cost that much. And you brought that point up earlier when we had talked
Yeah,
before.
I think it's something that it's a problem, because I think it could discourage people from pursuing changes. I
Mhm.
don't think you need to do all those things. If people want to, and they have the means, that's great. And they've given us some interesting insights into these things, like hyperbaric oxygen and what have you. But I don't think they're necessary to achieve 99% of the value. I would say if you can do a vigorous exercise program 3 or 4 times a week and eat a good diet that's mostly whole foods, you're probably getting the vast majority of the benefit. Maybe a supplement here or there for
Mhm.
something that you're deficient in. But yeah, lifestyle, if I could recommend just one thing, it would be exercise. I
Yeah,
really think that
movement.
that is the most potent influencer. I mean, and the data, a lot of the data reflects that. You see the methylation changes that occur after somebody starts a program of vigorous exercise 3 times a week. And within 3 months, you're seeing significant changes in their methylation patterns. It's really impressive. And the reason I like that so much too is that in my experience, that's when people start to change the course of other aspects of their lifestyle. So they start doing more exercise, they start to feel better, their mood improves, they start to sleep better.
Sleep better. I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they also, a lot of them, not everybody, but a lot of them I've noticed start to eat better too. Because they
Mhm.
say, well, I'm doing all this hard exercise. I don't want to undo my effort by eating a bunch of garbage and drinking a case of beer this weekend. So I'm going to cut back on that a little bit. And so all this stuff they pick up some momentum, and then they really start seeing changes in their health. And so that's why I always think that exercise is the best place to start. This is my personal opinion.
Well, I agree. It's a massive epigenetic modifier, and you can't exercise away a bad diet. How much do you have? Like, "Oh, I'm going to go work this off at the gym." No, because it's still changing. It's turning. If you're eating crap, it's still going to
Yeah.
turn up those crappy genes.
Yeah.
Exercise isn't going to turn that off for you. There's that interplay.
Yeah.
And funny because I just last week recorded a mini that'll come out probably December or January. I think December on my own because I heard Dr. Gabrielle Lyon talking about walking is not exercise. bullshit.
Yeah, it is.
And so I did a whole podcast on all the benefits of just walking and the research that's out there around that. So you can start. Not everybody's going to be in the shape to go do a HIIT workout. Or just move.
Right.
Just move. Go
That's right.
walk. I actually, like I said, I saw all of my metrics improve when I would take breaks. And this wasn't on hiking days, but take breaks and go walk. I
Yeah.
might go do 3 miles, and then at the end of the day, I could do my little mile and a half or something. My endurance score went up to expert. I'm not an endurance person. Walking has benefits. So I think,
Absolutely, it does.
like
Yeah.
like you said, like, just move.
Yeah, just do
Get off
something.
the
Start with
couch.
something. Yeah. You can even see it in blood glucose levels responding very quickly to eating a meal and sitting on the couch versus eating a meal and going for a walk. There's a
Yeah.
huge difference there in the way glucose homeostasis occurs. So, yeah, I agree
Mhm.
with you. And again, for certain people, it's really a matter of getting your heart rate up to whatever rate is appropriate for you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the same heart rate that a 20-year-old is going to be able to achieve. It's all
Correct.
relative to your age, and I think that should make it something else that should make it feel more accessible to more people as well. It's relative to
Mhm.
you and where you are, and anything you do, like you said, is going to help.
Yeah, isn't everything it's personalized health.
Yeah,
That's why I love working with it because we are all so different. Even the 3 of us, right?
yeah,
We're all fit, we're all healthy, but we all have different needs,
yeah,
and we all are going to train differently, and we're all going to recover and respond differently, and that's the beauty of the individual. And the more we look at all of us as individuals and not blanket, that it's one size fits all. That is what's crushing people and making some worse, keeping some in the same place where they are. So to see how you are, and it's great to compare and see where you're lying. The American public is not healthy. So,
yeah.
you, you're going to see most people doing this are going to be a little bit higher than the general public.
That's right.
But again, the more you understand you, it enables you to make those best decisions that are tailored specific to you.
Yeah, that's right. And these reports really they were designed with the populations on which the values were based were, I think, representative of the average person. But some of the thresholds here are set to optimal. So
Yes.
in other words, we're not looking for just, well, are you do you have the triglyceride levels of the average American? That's not really what we're after. And I think the kind of people that seek out a test like this, they're looking to optimize, not just be, well, I'm no sicker than 40% of the population. And so when you get these values that are out of range, some people, the way to react to those is, again, we're talking about optimization, not health versus sickness. And I think
Mhm.
people need to understand that too. So this is really a tool for dialing in and optimizing things, not just finding out whether you're sick or healthy. It's really not for that.
Absolutely. Jess?
All right.
Yeah.
Jess is like, I'm trying to get through this report.
Yeah,
You
I
guys
know we
keep
can't.
going off the lifestyle.
This next section of the report, the immune health section, is really to help give the results context. And I say that because we're looking at methylation profiles of white blood cell subtypes. And the models can handle noise in the data. And by noise, white blood cell compositions that change, right? Like our immune composition is always in flux. Really, what I look at here and pay the most attention to is going to be the CD4 CD8 ratio and looking at whether or not that ratio is low or high, because that's going to give me a sense of whether or not somebody was exposed to something, maybe, or fighting something off at the time that they tested, or potentially in a post infectious state. And that sort of skew can make the biological clocks, biological age in particular, look a little bit trend to be a little bit worse maybe than it otherwise would. So I like to reference this section just to give the rest of the report context. If I see something like monocytes that are a little bit high, again, our immune systems are always in flux. This isn't like a diagnostic tool. We're not trying to say anything concretely about your immune health profile here. It's mostly just to understand the results and how reliable they are for you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And Lauren, did you want to add anything there? Or was that
No, I think when we were looking at this, and again, with all these markers, I think it's worth emphasizing multiple times that what we're looking at are DNA methylation signatures that correlate with these values. We're not measuring them directly like you are in a CBC. We're predicting where these values would fall on a typical CBC by looking at the methylation patterns. So there's not going to be a perfect correlation. That's one thing. That being said, these actually do correlate very well with values as measured by flow cytometry.
Do.
And so when you see something like a single value, like in this case, monocytes being slightly high, does that mean anything? Maybe, maybe not. It might just be some variability. It might be some of the noise here. So I don't want to make too much out of that. On the other hand, is there a slightly high level of monocytes because of some of the other things we mentioned, the inflammation? Does that correlate with the inflammation signature? Maybe, we just don't know.
So you would tell, or a practitioner I would, or if you were doing the read, would say, you just get a CBC done, talk to your doc, and just see where things lie.
Yeah, just to make
Just to
sure
follow
that.
up.
I think so. I think that's always good advice. Again, we look at this as a way of guiding next steps, not as diagnostic in and of themselves. That's really not what they're for. They're for looking at the big picture and just helping identify areas where we might want to do a little bit more of a workup, might want to do a CBC, or if look at kidney function a little more closely, things like that.
Okay.
And oftentimes, too, when I see somebody that has a number of values outside of a normal range here, I'll get to this section of the report and somebody will be like, oh, I have an autoimmune condition. I haven't mentioned that. It's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I see that here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Usually somebody has a sense of whether or not there's anything odd happening or real happening for them there. All right, this next section of the report, so telomere length. Again, we are estimating this using DNA methylation. It's not a direct measurement. So again, this is estimation, and it's about as good as qPCR. It's not quite as good as like a flow fish for a direct measurement, but for all intents and purposes, a pretty nice measure for folks who are interested in telomere length. About 70% of telomere length is inherited. When you start seeing a bunch of plots over time, it generally speaking makes for a little bit of a dull looking trend because it doesn't tend to bounce around a whole lot. Now, with your result, you have nice long telomeres, and we give you an overall age, right? A biological age just based on that telomere estimation. And so you get a sense of where you fall. So another nice result for you.
Oh, yeah.
We'll scroll down now to a couple markers of inflammation, both CRP and IL-6. I think we made the point earlier, but it's probably worth reiterating here that our epigenetic biomarkers are more like a 2 to 3 month running average. So this isn't going to be like you went to the hospital, you had a CRP, an acute CRP run or something like that. And what does that value correlate to? This is almost going to be like if you had a CRP measurement every single day for 3 months and then average those values. It's going to be more like that, which is really nice because we know that those long-term trends have bigger implications for our health outcomes than any particular point in time. So these markers really give you more of a sense of chronic inflammation. When we look at CRP and IL-6 for you, those both look nice and low. So there's really nothing particularly concerning there. Nothing concerning there.
Awesome. And CRP, I've never had high CRP, so that's good.
Yeah, that's great.
Correlates
I
with
think interestingly too, I see these often associated with like CRP. I'll often pick up here folks who are drinkers. So even before I get to the alcohol risk score, which will be at the bottom of this report, this is where I'll be like, oh, high CRP, and then I'll cheat, scroll down to the end of the report.
Busted.
Exactly.
Can't fool me.
Yeah. And similarly, actually, with IL-6 is that a lot of times I'll see high IL-6 values with folks who are smokers.
Yeah, that's a big one for IL-6. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, this next clock that we have here, fit age. So these are 4 markers of fitness. So we have grip strength, gait speed, VO2 max, FEV1. And again, we're calculating this in the same way as every other measure on this report. So here we're correlating measured values, clinical values that were taken for folks who are in those biobank data and associated methylation profiles with those measured values. It's so funny. I can a lot of times get through the report, and then right at this section, I will get the question like, "Hold on, pump the brakes. How did you calculate this?" And it's like actually the
Yeah.
same way that
How
we
can
did
a
that.
blood test tell me what my grip strength is? I'm like, it's not. That's not what we're saying.
Because this one shocked me. This
Yeah.
one shocked me, especially around VO2 max. My VO2 max is actually pretty high.
Yeah.
So
So
that shocked me.
there is a little bit of fine print here, which says that these are our least correlated clocks that can be used by most to gamify fitness. So that is really the disclaimer here, is that of all of the biomarkers that we include in our reports, these ones have the lowest correlation coefficients. And so that's just something to keep in mind. So it's not uncommon to see like 3 out of the 4 that work really well for somebody, and it's like one probably like yours, right? Like your VO2 max, just methylation might never be a good way to estimate that for you. So,
Yeah.
Good to know,
Yeah.
because I was like, "What? This is
Yeah.
the
No,
best it's ever been."
yeah. That's all it is you basically it's saying that this methylation pattern is seen in people who have a VO2 max of this. And
Yeah.
obviously that's an average. There's all kinds of variability there.
Yeah, I don't like the frowny faces on my report, so
Yeah.
I don't like
dramatic.
I like the green smiley face,
You
not a
want green
frowny face.
smileys. Yeah. Yep.
You
Some
know
of the
what's
frowny faces you can ignore though.
what's a little bit of a bummer too is that essentially this is saying you're right on the line of regression too. So really this should be like
Yeah.
a middle of the road face. This should
Straight
not
face,
be
like
a face.
the smirk.
And I mean, this is just a general principle of medical tests that you're taught from day one in medical school is if the lab result and the patient don't look alike, you discard the lab result. If that you assume that there might be some error there because if the patient is hiking mountains at 11,000 feet, the VO2 max is probably higher.
Yep.
Oh,
And then lastly, here we have a couple of really interesting, I think, behavioral sort of risk scores, right? So smoking and alcohol. Both of these, again, we're looking at methylation tags that are associated with smoking and self reported alcohol consumption. The smoking risk scores, I think, pretty intuitive to interpret, right? Here we're picking up on both first and secondhand smoke exposure and your risk for a smoking related disease. Alcohol's a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more complicated in that not only does this correlate with self reported alcohol consumption, but also folks who have like a strong family history of alcoholism. You can
ah,
through their methylation here. Folks who just have a lot of trouble metabolizing alcohol. I'll often hear that. I'll talk with somebody and they'll end up in the intermediate risk score and they'll be like, I don't even really drink that much. But when I do, my hangovers are horrible. There's like a susceptibility to adverse effects from alcohol. It's just a little bit more complicated. But I think, as I was talking about earlier with their association with both IL-6 and CRP, it can make for a really nice communication message to folks who are drinking a lot or smoking in terms of how it's impacting them.
yeah. I don't smoke, and I haven't drank since April of 2019. So
Mm, good work.
that shows.
Yeah.
Undoing the
That's
80s.
right here.
Yeah. Hopefully, undoing the 80s. I can get those brain cells back. All I can say, and I just a friend of mine talking the other day, I said, "Thank God we didn't have cell phones."
Yeah.
It's God, there, there are some things I'm very grateful for.
Oh, the good old days, right?
Yeah.
Oh boy,
Captured.
rotary dial. I have to place an emergency breakthrough. Friends on the phone too long. I'm glad I grew up when I did.
I agree. Yeah.
It's a lot more stress for kids nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, we were told to go out and play. And I don't know, maybe because of that kind of stuff, that's helped here. Who knows? But like I said,
Mhm.
I had times when I didn't do the right things. I worked graveyard shifts in law enforcement for a while. very, very taxing on this body because I thought I was a night owl. Turned out I was a morning person. So I really was doing the wrong things at the wrong time. And that was probably the chronobiology, one of the biggest changes for me that sent me in the right direction,
Yeah,
understanding that.
for
I was
sure.
doing CrossFit endurance at night at
Uh-huh.
6:30 at night after a 10-hour shift. Had no idea. That's probably why
That was-
autoimmune, everything took over. It took flare. But
Yeah, flipping your circadian rhythm on its head is very stressful, and I did that,
for
and it
54
shows up in
years.
your DNA. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely true. That's
Yep.
one of the. I think it's one of the worst things you can do. In fact, yeah.
Yeah.
And you
Guard
survived, and
against.
you reversed it.
Yeah, for sure. How many people, though? I lived out of my rhythm for 54 years. But again, when you know, you can change it. It's one of my clients last night. She is same as me, an activator, and she's going to bed like 3 a.m., midnight. And I
Yeah,
said, you need to switch this. And she texted me after our session last night. She texted me and said, I'm in line to be asleep by 11 tonight. So
yeah,
one little change, and I think there's gonna be some difference there, right? It's just these different steps we can take that can
yeah,
really make the difference.
yeah. And that
Is
one
that
step usually leads to others.
just
Yeah.
one small step? Was there more to this, Jess, or was that the end of this?
So it's practically the end. So this last section here includes all of the biomarkers for you. So the rest of the 33 that are within the normal range. So I do always like to scroll through these and see if there's anything interesting because of course everything exists on a continuum, right? So regardless of whether or not
Mhm.
it's flagged, doesn't mean necessarily it's not worth paying attention to. But all of your values here look exactly where they should be. I don't even really see anything that's close to a cutoff. And so
Yay.
that is the end of your report.
I love it. This was super cool, and it was fun to have both of your inputs on here and to dig a little deeper. Well, actually, a lot deeper than we even did when we went over it the first time. But so I truly appreciate it. But hopefully, it gives people a great idea of the amount of detail that you can pull from here to help you move forward. Whether you're sitting pretty like I am, it's more fire for me to say I'm staying. This is why Thanksgiving's coming and I make all my own food and I will take 8 things to somewhere instead of, well, I'm just going to appease and make everybody else happy and do the things that don't work for me. And that's where I am. And this shows this because I want that health span.
Yeah.
I want that to me it's quality of life. And like Lauren had said in the beginning, if I don't want to live to 100 if I'm going to be on oxygen on a walker and I can't leave my house. That's not, that would, that's death to me. Actual death would be freeing from that. And that's not how I want to live my life. So I'm willing to sacrifice some things because to me, it's not sacrifice. I might sacrifice now, but it's going to pay off and live a healthier, more enjoyable life.
Yep.
And that's what I try to get people on this channel to do is think about what does it take for you to live a healthier, happier life.
Yep.
And yeah. And Jess, if you want to just what's on the other report, just describe a bit how is that going to be different if they added on
Mm.
the other report?
We're going to have to get you one of those.
So
Uh,
Yeah.
it's you are well overdue,
You
Susan.
think this is detailed? Wait till we get into true health.
and when I do that, we'll come back on and do this again.
Well, I was going to say it might make an interesting follow up. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, it'll be fantastic. So it looks, in terms of the biomarkers themselves, it looks an awful lot like this. So there are about 120 plus. I think, I'm trying not to exaggerate, but I think right now it's actually 133 biomarkers across a variety of categories. So here we're talking like vitamins, amino acids, fats and cellular membranes,
Yep.
mitochondria, toxins, like all sorts of really neat biomarkers that really help you dial in. This is really getting at health optimization. Yeah. So
And they were
that
really
one,
pulled out of the data because they correlate
Yeah.
with the onset of conditions and diseases. So there's some really unique esoteric biomarkers in there, but they're there because that's what the AI and the bioinformaticists pulled out. It's really interesting.
yeah, I definitely need to do that. And that will be another fun podcast we are totally going to do. So if you are interested in grabbing a TruDiagnostic kit, we do have a discount code. So you would go, and I'm going to put all of this in the show notes as well. And if you go directly through TruDiagnostic, you can set up with Miss Jess and have a read done for you, or you can go through me and work with me. But it's TruDiagnostic, and it's not TRUE, it's TRU diagnostic.com/discount/Susan Jeans, SUSANGENES, to get your discount on your kit. You can do the TruAge, the combination of the TruAge and True Health. Today we went over the TruAge. The True Health was the other one. And you can also get a Dunedin by itself. So maybe you're somebody that's listening and you already have one of these and you're like, I want to see if my pace has changed at all. You can get that Dunedin, right? Does Dunedin still come with the telomere?
So we'd have to check with Hannah on that because I thought it's just the TruAge and True Health, but we can circle back around and I can.
Ooh, okay. If that's the case, let me know and we'll edit that out.
Yeah, find out.
So Liz, pay attention. All right. So do you guys have anything else to add? Like I said, I'll have your bios and everything in the show notes and the link to TruDiagnostic to grab one of these amazing tests. And anything else either of you have to add?
No, it's great. Keep doing what you're doing. Stay healthy.
Yeah.
You're looking good.
Yeah.
Awesome. I am so grateful that you guys were able to come on here and spend, because we've been on here for a while. So thank you for taking the time to do this, to enlighten people and show them that this is another tool in the toolbox that they may not be aware of. And I saw there was an ad for TruDiagnostic on Facebook and somebody literally wrote a comment. It was the only comment on there. And they said, this is bunk. This is lies. And I was like, dude, I worked for them for a year and a half. It's not. Trust me. This is one of the most reputable companies with the most stellar quality assurance that I've ever come by. And he did not reply. I was like, if anybody's going to see a comment, at least it's that. So it was a good thing that I saw that. But that's why I want to put this out there because, again, the more we have available to us to make the best decisions moving forward, this is an epigenetically driven lifestyle. It's according to you. And the more you know about you, the more empowering it is and the better quality of life you can live. If you have young kids, you affect them. You affect their epigenetics just by what you surround them with. If you are going to give birth or have children, we know that the father, even his genetics play a part. It's not just the mother. And so take the time to know what you have going on and what your propensities are and how to work with that. And you're never too young and you're never too old to make changes. So our body is wonderful. So thank you so much for joining us. Again, we'll have everything in the show notes. If you have any questions, please reach out. I can always ask you guys if there's specific questions. I can reach out to you too. And I can tell you, like, just everybody at True is just so helpful. When there are questions, I've never had anybody like ghost me. I just get everything answered, and just a really quality group. And I'm very blessed to have been a part of it and see that it's just continuing and growing and providing just more amazing information to the public. So thank you so much. Get out there, make it a great day, and be your most authentic self.
Thank you so much for having us, Susan.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for tuning into my podcast. If you enjoyed this week's episode, I'd love for you to share it with someone who'd find the information useful. Please leave a review anywhere you listen to podcasts, and it'll help the information get out to others. If you're interested in seeing if we're a great fit to work together, the link is in the show notes below where you can sign up for a free consultation with me. So go make it a great day and let your authentic self shine.